Okay everyone, so in this next lesson, we will talk about the minimum height property here, and we'll try to add some additional content here inside of our header section here, and try to add an image and maximize the use of the properties that we have so far learned in our previous coding challenges. Now let's go to the documentation here. It says that the property will be defining the minimum height of an element, and if the content is smaller than the minimum height will be applied. If the content is larger than the minimum height property has no effect. So this prevents the value of the height property from becoming smaller than the minimum height. So if we try to go here, we can see an example of the CSS syntax. So we have the length, initial value, and the inherit value here. Length value, percentage value, initial value, and the inherit value. So the default value is 0, which defines the minimum height in pixels, centimeters, and etc. So let's try to go and check out the play it here. Defines the minimum height in percentage of the containing block. So we do have here an example from where we have 60 pixels and 80 pixels. So I think there's a better example on how to use the minimum height if we go back to our background image property here. Let's see that background attachment example that we have here. And here's a good example with regards to how we can create a parallax scrolling effect that doesn't require us to go and use JavaScript. So if we try to go down here, we can see here some description, the class name fixed background image. We have specified a height or the minimum height of the background image. We set the background image to fixed so that it will not be scrolling along with the page. We have centered the background image. We set the background image to no repeat. We have tackled this before, so this will be very easy for you. Scale the background image to be as large as possible. So if I click on this, so the better example than the one that we have here is this example. So if we try to go and click on this, let me just see here, and you would see here that once I scroll down, the background image is fixed on the center, and we have a minimum height of 500 pixels here. So it seems like we are maximizing the use of the parallax effect in this case. And if we try to go and decrease this, let's say 200 pixels, run, and there you go. You would see that we didn't even need to use JavaScript for us to be able to apply a parallax effect inside of our web document here. Okay, so I want to apply that in our project here. So let me go and open our code editor and proceed to our header section here. So we do have here our header image. But what I would want to do here, let me just close this here, and then I would want to create a new div inside of the header container. So the div will be containing a text box. So I'll call this div.textbox. And inside of the div text box, I would want to have a div.textbox heading that will contain an h1, and that will have two span elements. So we'll talk about the span element later on, so that at least we can also maximize the use of the span element when it comes to styling our content. So I would want to have inside of the first span element the RBSL original stories text, and I would want to have a break there, and then here I would want to have a quote that says, "A man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea lives forever." And that quote came from John F. Kennedy. So let's save that. Let's see how that will look on our browser. And there we go. So we have the quote here, and we still haven't specified any styling yet. So let's go and try to select the text box that we have just created. And let's try to go and apply some styling. Now let's go to our style sheet here, and let me just move up here, and then just below the header links here, I would want to go and create a text box section here, or styling. Then I'm going to select the text box that we have made, and I'm going to go and use a background image URL, something that we used before. So let's have, I actually added a picture here, or an artwork that was made by my cousin. She's still studying in secondary high school, and I actually bought this artwork from her because I really think that this will be fitting the website that I'm building right now for this course. And she's actually helping out with the expenses, especially due to the pandemic. And she's also using the income that she gets from the artwork for her online classes. You might need some digital artwork with the following layout. You might want to go and check out her Facebook page, Janine Micaela Arts. So here's the version of the digital artwork that she works on. So I'm just going to leave a link of the FB page for you guys. So at least if ever you would need such digital artwork, you might want to go and contact her. Now let's try to go and add a little bit of padding here of at least 25%, and then a background size of cover and background position of 20%, 30%. So if you remember, we used these properties in our previous lessons. And let's have a background attachment of fixed. Let's first check out our browser on how it looks now. So let me just go and open our browser here. And there you go. There's the art, and we can see that we are able to scroll down. So let's just do some little bit of editing and styling for the background image that we have here. Let's go back to our code editor here and try to add some additional styling for our project here. Okay, so we have a padding, and let's give him a margin of 0 pixel top, 50 pixel right, 40 pixel bottom, and 50 pixel left. And then let's give it a border radius of 20 pixel, and the border will be having a 10 pixel solid black color. Let's now try to go and refresh the browser and check how that will look like. And there we go. So we now have a square box here from where the image is scrolling down. So we will just need to reposition our about section here. Now let's just go and change the color of the text here. I would want it to be color white. Let's save that. Let's refresh. So I would want to have a background color for the text box here so that it will be emphasizing the text that we have here as the foreground color. So let's go and put this inside of a box. So let's try to go and target the div here, the text box heading. Let's go back here, up here, and then apply some styling for the text box heading. I would want to go and give this a background color of RGBA 1684 to 11 with an opacity of 0.63. Now let's go and try to refresh this, and there you go. We now have that box from where we can go and start doing some additional styling so that the text will be more emphasized. Now what I want to do here is to move the div text box that we have here that contains the text heading down, and I don't want it to be behind the navigation here. Let me just double check our markup here. So we have our header element, we have the div container that contains the header, nav, and the header logo box here. So if I go and select the div text box, and let's check here what could be the reason why it's behind the header nav here. We can see that it's inside of the div header container, and we don't want that. We want it to be outside of the header container and be a child element of the header element. So let's go and try to implement that in our code. Now let's go down to our markup here. So we have here the div text box. Let's remove that from the div header container, and let's make it a child element of the header element. Let's go and refresh this, and there you go. It's no longer inside of the header container, so now it's occupying its own height. So let's just go and do some adjustments here. We can see now that we have the About Me section here, and we are able to maximize the use of a parallax effect using the background attachment property that we learned to use last time. Now let's go back to our code editor, and let's just apply a little bit of styling for our text box heading. So let's say I would want this to have a 50% height. Let's also give it a border of 2 pixels, solid, and white. Let's also have a position absolute value and top of 40%. Let's first check how this will be looking on our browser. Okay, so it has a much bigger space now, and we would want that to be centered. So let's have left 50%, transform, translate, x, negative 50%. So let's go and save that. Let's see how that will look on our browser here. Okay, now let's give this a little bit of additional width. So let's go back to our code editor here and give it a width of 70%. Let's save that, and there we go. We were able to center our box here. Now we'll try to apply some styling in our next lesson using the span element. And we'll also be adding a profile picture here and we'll try to link the resume that we built here in the About Me page. So that will be all for this lesson. Thank you, and see you on our next lesson.